Hello everyone, this video is going to be about my childhood train, 617. This particular NW2 switcher was only made in 1 year, in 1963. Actually the year I was born. It had basically some features that current engines in the 1960s didn't have. Had extra details, the antenna, the bell, the horn. It has actually a horn inside it, as well as double uh, axle magnetraction. This guy is a really good puller. It has a sheet metal frame, and my model in particular had a sheet metal frame that had some blemishes in it. If you'd notice, the fuel tanks here basically are curved. I guess to cut costs, they cut these stampings really close together, and the other stamping, it had some pointed ends on the ends there I had to kind of Dremel down. It was a fairly good puller. It had stamped sheet metal trucks with die-cast sides put on them. As a kid, this engine had so many problems, and I tried to fix it several times. And now I'm restoring it by actually putting a bell on it and the antenna, and then in the front here I have replaced the marker lights. In addition, I had the shell was cracked, and I fixed that by actually using super glue and baking soda to build that back up. It's kind of been a labor of love. It is one of the trains that I loved as a kid. I was the last of 4 boys, so basically the trains were pretty much destroyed by the time I got a hold of them, but you know, I am the only one that actually carried on the tradition of my 3 brothers. So this engine means a lot to me, and it's actually kind of cool. So I'm going to take the cover off and show you kind of what I did to fix it up. It's a lot of hacks, but it runs well. I took the screw out the front to get the cab out. It has a tab in the back, and here is my fixes. For some reason, as a kid, I broke the armature plate. I'm not sure how I did that, and the stud for this one screw fell off. So right now the armature plate's held on with 1 screw. It seems to be fine right now. That grayish, or not grayish, but that rough looking area is actually super glue that I applied and I cured quickly with baking soda to actually add more plastic to the brush plate. The brush plate actually was cracked in half. It had been previously glued when I was a kid, but I glued it better this time and it works very well. I resoldered the connections. I ended up having to make my own little bracket here for the relay for the horn. That used to be basically brass that would go over to where you see that strip with the screw. That kind of broke off over the years after I fixed it. The horn I actually took apart when I was a kid by bending those tabs back and somehow got it working again. It's still working to this day, as you can see when I turn it on. You can adjust the horn pitch with that screw. It's very sensitive. There's not much you can do with that. In the case of the light bulb, this is one of these 2-pin light bulbs. This socket actually was broken, and one side of it had the pin receptacle not working, so I actually cut up a little piece of thin metal and repaired that basically by putting my own little socket in there. So there's been a lot of changes to get this thing back to operation, but it's been a lot of fun. Definitely a lot of fun. Oiled the motor gear, greased it up really good. It actually works really well. When I was a kid, I actually had to this motor frame, which is sheet metal, you can kind of see that, basically fell apart, and you could probably see that I applied glue to get it to finally stay together. This motor would kind of get stuck. And I actually took apart the motor and ground down the armature, thinking that it was getting stuck because of the armature, whatever. I did all sorts of things as a kid trying to fix up this engine. Fortunately, it's actually working pretty well now. I guess I'm better as I'm older to fix things. So let's check out the horn. So let's check this engine out. So the horn does work. It's actually, unlike most post-war diesels, it uses a C battery instead of a D battery for the horn. The horn actually is an interesting story. When I was a kid, the horn wasn't working, and I actually pulled back the tabs of the horn and got it working on my own, which is kind of cool. And it's working still to this day. This engine was built in 1963, so it's quite a bit old. It's 40 plus 20. It's about 60 years old, and it still works pretty good. It's a good puller. With its double axle magnetraction, it really pulls better than a lot of post-war engines that I have in my collection. And it actually has some really good slow speed too. Here I am at probably about 8 volts, and it just crawls around with real nice slow speed, which I really like. Another frustration I had as a kid was the coupler on the back, which is mounted in a sheet metal kind of U-shaped piece, would fall off because these are all kind of stamped metal trucks, and the construction, they basically I guess squished the tabs to take up a gap, and they just fell off. I'm still looking for that part somewhere in a box. I do have the front coupler, actually was missing in this as a kid, and it actually, I have it's fixed now. The couplers on this model did not actually operate. They were solid couplers. So antennas on these NW2s break all the time. And then there was no bell on it at all. The horn actually was there, but there was no bell, and the antenna was broken quite a bit. There was no marker lights. And then right here you can see at the bottom, you can see what I did is I added some super glue and I built up the bottom again. And what I did is I took some chopsticks, used those as a hole to kind of keep the hole, and I put like a tape dam in here. And then I essentially poured some super glue in there and then sprinkled on baking soda, and it cured instantly and created that new plastic for me. I probably could have sanded it a little better, but it's good enough. And also, so then basically I also got new antenna and horn. I put actually a lens in the back here. I might put a light in the back. There's not a lot of room with the horn. The original model did not have a lens in this hole. And then for the marker lights, instead of gluing them in, I just put a little dab of hot glue, because hot glue is easily removed. If they break off, I can get them out easily. To actually get the antenna out, I had to kind of use a little tiny drill bit to kind of take away some of the plastic so it would eventually fall out. For the bell, I had to do a similar thing. And actually the replacement bell that I have is kind of rubbery, so it shouldn't break, but it wasn't exactly the right shape, so the hole was expanded just ever so slightly to put that in there.